I studied archaeology and museum studies, and I was a museum curator for 12 years before becoming an artist. I've been a full-time artist for 10 years, working in printmaking and enamelling. In particular, the use of enamelling on copper and wood engraving. To my knowledge, there are only a handful of wood engravers in Ireland, part of a community of contemporary printmakers, very few in number around the world, who keep the art of wood engraving alive by honing the essential skills while developing its potential, but still using the same traditional tools from centuries ago. Wood engraving in Ireland has a long history, and I follow a strong line of wood engravers, men and women, jobbing illustrators and artists who championed this tradition. Incidentally, 2020 is the 100th anniversary of the setting up of the Society of Wood Engravers. Wood engraving is a painstaking process requiring stillness, intense focus and concentration. It differs from woodcut printmaking, which uses softer wood cut on the length of the trunk, like planks, and uses tools that look more like gouges and chisels. The preferred material for wood engraving is boxwood, a slow-growing tree taking many generations to form an even, dense and extremely hard-grained wood. But other wood types can be used, such as lemonwood and maple. There is even a synthetic material, but for the purposes of this video, I will use lemonwood. The close graining of these types of wood and the lack of granulation make them perfect for wood engraving. Beech and oak, although very hard woods, are not used because it is hard to move the engraving tools smoothly across the wood surface. On the left is an oak block and on the right is a boxwood block. The wooden blocks used for wood engraving are made using the end grain or cross section of the tree. They are cut to type height, which means that they can be placed alongside typeface lettering for printing. The history of wood engraving is linked to text printing. Thomas Buick introduced the engraving of wooden blocks using metal engraving tools back in the late 1700s. He wanted an alternative to metal plate engraving and woodcut images and a means of placing images into text for printing leaflets, newspapers, books, etc. He found that by using the metal engraving tools and a dense hard wood such as boxwood allowed him to create intricate and very detailed images. The metal tools and processes he would have used in the 1700s are still used today. These sharp-bladed tools, the spit sticker, the graver, the scorper and the tint tool, are used to engrave an image onto the aged wood. But first, the block needs to be covered with Indian ink, or in this case white gouache, so that I can see any mark that I make with the engraving tools. To achieve wood engraving relief prints, the image required is sketched onto the surface of the block, using a soft pencil so as not to mark the wood's satin smooth finish. I must remember to create the sketch in reverse on the block. Once I am happy with the sketched image, I will place the block on the leather sandbag in readiness for engraving. The sandbag allows the block to be manoeuvred easily and keeps my left hand below the level of the block's surface and away from the extremely sharp tools in case they should slip. For very detailed work, I will use a magnifier on a stand to assist with the very fine line making. Every mark made by the engraving tools on the surface of the wood block creates a white line on the final image. Therefore, in the process of incising lines into the hardwood and paring away the surface, I appear to be inscribing with light. Hence the title for this video is Letting in the Light, the art of the wood engraver. Once I've finished with the engraving of the image, I will ink the block using an oil-based printing ink and a roller in readiness for printing. I have prepared the smooth printing paper in advance by cutting it down to the required size. Most contemporary wood engravers have access to special relief presses, many of which date from the 1850s, like this beast. But I do not have one, and instead I hand burnish all my prints. A slower process, but for me, it is all part of the textural pleasure of this form of printmaking. I apply pressure to the back of the paper to transfer the ink from the block to the paper. The resultant image is a reverse image of that on the block. Wood engraving is almost exclusively and traditionally carried out in black and white, but some contemporary wood engravers use colour. I have sometimes used 2 or more blocks to create a final image and to add colour, but I usually revert to black and white quite a lot. The inked page is hung to dry, a process that can take up to 2 weeks, as the oil-based ink dries very slowly. As a practitioner of wood engraving, I learnt this old traditional form of illustrative printmaking from master wood engravers in England, and I carry on this form of printmaking here in Ireland, exhibiting my work around the world in countries such as Japan, the United States, Canada, Switzerland and Russia, and at the Royal Academies in London, Scotland, Dublin and Belfast. I love this form of printmaking and the slow, almost meditative way an image evolves, and the tactile nature of the materials used are very pleasing. In my own small contribution to this printmaking form, I am helping to keep it alive.